kind of weird for me to talk about something that happened last week again. I guess I should insert this obligatory mention. But anyways, there's a good reason for that. Uh, I spent the entire weekend trying to search for uh, a good site that could even where I could rewatch like the Pocono race in full because I tried tuning into my streaming service and uh, there was just nothing there. I tried to watch. I turned on the TV and tried to rewatch see if they could like rewatch the race like at 3 a.m. or something. That wasn't the case either. Um, so yeah, I wasn't able to watch the truck race at Pocono, which has gotten me really frustrated because I really want to get a race review out of that done. And I already have my Xfinity. I already watched the Xfinity race yesterday, and I already have my review for that. But I just wanted to have uh, I wanted to get my thoughts on the truck race out of the way. I completely forgot that I had yet to talk about that Chicago street course race that happened last week for the Cup race. I only talked about the Xfinity race that was on Friday, but I never really got my. I never got to express my thoughts on this race. So yeah, let's get right into it. Just like at Xfinity and honestly this weekend as a whole, I was really looking forward to seeing a street race on the dry. And just like what happened in Xfinity, practice and qualifying were pretty chaotic for the Cup race. Arguably more incidents than what we saw in the Xfinity race. Several guys to the rear for unapproved adjustments/repairs. And mind you, this happened in the dry. Practice and qualifying was held at Saturday on dry weather, on a dry surface, under the sun. Obviously, that wouldn't be the case on Sunday. You guys will see what I mean by that. But Larson started on the pole, his fifth pole of the year already, with Ty Gibbs in second, and Michael McDowell third, and Tyler Reddick fourth, and SVG in fifth, running the Kaulig Racing number 16, trying to defend his title from last year as defending race winner of the race. So the top five qualifiers are all guys that you would normally expect to run up front. Behind them, though, Bubba Wallace in sixth. That was a surprise. Christopher Bell at seventh. Not really a surprise. Bell is becoming pretty underrated as a road course racer, I gotta say. Alex Bowman qualified 8th, another pretty underrated road course racer. Daniel Suarez 9th, sneakily good road course racer. Keselowski 10th, used to be good on road courses. Now he's pretty much hit or miss at best. And then behind them, Denny Hamlin qualified 11th, John Hunter Nemechek 12th, Carson Hocevar 13th, then Chase Elliott 18th, a bit further back, Corey LaJoie 20th, Justin Haley 23rd, Truex 24th, William Byron 27th, Joe Logano 32nd, Austin Hill 34th, making another start in the RCR 33. Then Josh Berry 36th, Allmendinger 37th, running the third Kaulig car, the number 13 because SVG is running the 16. Also Joey Hand running the 60 car for RFK, also making his start at this race. Josh Bilicki 39th, he's running the MBM 66 car, and Kaz Grala in 40th. So we have a full 40 car field for this race, a rare instance nowadays for any Cup race that isn't the Daytona 500. So that was nice to watch. Like I said, though, several guys were going to the rear. Josh Berry, he spun out in turn 5 and hit the wall in qualifying. Most of these incidents were during qualifying, mind you. Brad Keselowski also spun and hit the wall in qualifying, this time in turn 11. Corey LaJoie hit the wall in turn 8. Ryan Blaney also to the rear. Chris Buescher, he broke a toe link after hitting the wall in turns 4 and 5. Again, this happened in qualifying. Harrison Burton also going to the rear. William Byron, he had a power steering issue in qualifying. He didn't crash or anything, but he had a power steering issue. Eric Jones also to the rear. And Josh Bilicki, who will make a pass-through penalty on lap 1 after failing inspection several times. So, the race is about to begin. The command to fire engines is given. And as soon as the drivers turn on the engines, like literally, as soon as the drivers fire it up, it starts to rain. Like, are you kidding me? I wanted to see the street course in the dry, and there was a 10% chance of rain as well. But yeah, that little cell just parked itself over the track, and it just started pouring, which really upset me because I wanted to see the street course in the dry. Obviously, this wasn't gonna be a case where the race would be where rain was gonna ruin the entire weekend. Obviously, that wasn't gonna be the case, but. Good thing is, though, it was just a light shower, but enough for the teams to switch to rain tires during the pace laps. Now, thankfully, unlike what happened at New Hampshire, NASCAR is giving these teams the option to start the race on either slicks or wets. They would not force them into one or the other. They're gonna let these teams cook, which I love. I know they did it because New Hampshire. They did it this way because at New Hampshire it was like a new thing. It was a new thing to do, but. For road courses, obviously you want to let these teams cook because they already have a precedent of running in rain. Again, I understand why NASCAR was more hand-holding when it came to on ovals, because you don't usually run wet weather tires on ovals. But I really hope they just let these teams cook at any type of track that runs wet weather tires moving forward. So regardless of this, though, most of the field decide to stay with the slicks. They were anticipating that the track would dry because it was a light shower. So they anticipated the track would dry and it would not rain until later on in the race as the race went on. So only 8 drivers ended up starting the race on the wets. Those drivers being Ryan Blaney, Corey LaJoie, Logano, Martin Truex, Harrison Burton, Austin Cindric, Zane Smith, and Austin Dillon. And as soon as the race starts, half of the field spins their tires because they started the race on slicks, including the pole sitter, Kyle Larson, who has a really bad start to the race, and he drops to third by the time they enter turn 1 behind Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick. Despite the pretty precarious conditions, though, drivers, they did a pretty good job managing to tiptoe around the track without spinning out or wrecking. We saw several cars slip and slide, though, but overall, it was a pretty clean start to the race, especially compared to the chaos that was last year's edition. That being said, though, we see more teams start to peel off and pit for wets on the green as they anticipate more rain on the way, which will make the wets the better choice long term. So Eric Jones, William Byron, and Josh Berry are the first to pit, doing so just before the green flag dropped. Then on lap 4, Michael McDowell and Ryan Preece, they also come down for the wet tires, as well as Corey LaJoie. Then a couple laps later, Martin Truex and Austin Dillon, they come down pit road to change away from the wets to the dries, which is interesting since you got to remember, these two were among the few who started on the wets. But you also got to remember that they have like limited sets of wet weather tires. There's a reason why NASCAR was very hand-holding at New Hampshire, is because they also had like limited sets of wet weather tires, and if the track is drying up, those tires like they wear down faster. So it's not a bad idea to save those for later if there is more rain on the way. Meanwhile, as more cars pit for wets, that means more lap traffic for the leaders to navigate, and this eventually brings the top 5 of Ty Gibbs, SVG, Larson, Bell, and Briscoe together. Because you got to remember, wet tires, they are good on wet weather, but they are very slow on dry surface. And the track was starting to dry up. Like towards the end of stage 1, it was starting to dry up. Like I said, it was a pretty light drizzle that started this race. Before the race happened, there was like a light drizzle. It wasn't like it was pouring like last year. So with the lap car of Ryan Preece holding up the 54, this allowed SVG to take the lead with Christopher Bell following suit in second. It was a pretty great pass too. I really thought that they were gonna wreck, that everyone was gonna wreck, or like the Ty Gibbs was gonna get put in the wall by Ryan Preece. Again, fortunately, this wasn't the case. It's really raining here. Oh, look at me! I'm talking about rain, and it just starts raining as I'm streaming this video. But yeah, anyways. Unfortunately, it's at this point where the incidents start happening, and also starting the heavy rain in turns 9 and 12 doesn't help matters either. This was a pretty weird stage in that one part of the track was dry and the other part of the track was wet. So it was definitely a little bit of of a treacherous track to navigate. But yeah, Stenhouse spun into the turn 1 wall. No caution came out for that. The caution actually came out a few laps later for Corella Joy spinning in turn 11, though the wettest section of the track. And he just sat there waiting for an opportunity to get back going because he could not get it straight, because that's a very narrow part of the track and cars were just continuing to go by. So NASCAR, they just had to throw the yellow to give him a chance to refire it up and get the car straightened out. And then during the caution, it starts pouring rain like at every single part of the racetrack. So this all but guaranteed that this will be a wet weather race moving forward. This caution also brings the stage to a close, with SVG winning stage 1, still in a playoff point away from the Cup regulars, with Christopher Bell second, Ty Gibbs third, Chase Briscoe, Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, Bubba Wallace, Todd Gilliland, Tyler Reddick, and Daniel Suarez completing the top 10. So we go to pit road. Everyone who hadn't switched to the wets, they do so now, taking 4 fresh wet weather tires. Only Zane Smith stayed out because he had already pitted for wet weather tires, and he takes the lead. Christopher Bell wins the race of pit road over Ty Gibbs, Larson, and SVG. But it's a very tight situation because just as the leaders were coming off pit road, the jet dryers were passing by. So this forces the leaders to come to a stop, because you gotta respect, you gotta give those service vehicles the space, the space to, so that they can work on drying the track. So the leaders come to a stop, and this stacks up the whole field. No one with serious damage though. The one who got like the worst of it is Reddick after getting to the back of Bubba Wallace, but it was still a tight situation all the same. So stage 2 begins, and we got even more tire spin. Christopher Bell and Alex Bowman, they almost spin off of turn 12, and the entire field scatters as visibility starts to become an issue. Bubba Wallace, he gets spun off of turn 2 by Alex Bowman, and he comes to a stop across the nose of Suarez. No caution for that. Moments later, the caution actually came out for Chase Briscoe, getting loose, entering turn 6, while slamming the tire barrier hard. But that's not even the big part of the wreck. The biggest part was him clipping the 16 of SVG in the process and sending him into the wall, hard on the right side as well. Briscoe is able to continue because he hit the tire barriers, but SVG, he hit a part of the track that was full on concrete. The caution comes out yet again, and just like that, last year's winner is out of the race. You literally cannot make this stuff up. Literally, the only thing that could have messed them up was if something or someone else took him out, because up until this point, he looked unbeatable. So that was really painful to watch, especially since he was single-handedly making this race fun to watch. Think about it. Shane Van Gisbergen was so good on these road courses and street courses that he was single-handedly making a Gen 7 road course race worth watching. Amidst all of the chaos, obviously, Ty Gibbs is able to take the lead from Zane Smith. Moments before NASCAR decided to red flag the race as they determined the track was too wet and the visibility was poor enough, was starting to get poor. For reference, the visibility on that last restart was 2021 COTA level. So yeah, it was that bad. For those of you guys who know, who watched that race back then, it was really bad. So again, the problem is not that it was too wet to race. The real problem was that the puddles of standing water were creating spray and affecting the visibility. And while I do agree with the decision to stop the race, because again, COTA 2021, we don't want another repeat of that, I do not agree with the thought process behind starting the race this late, especially when it comes to street courses, because number one, there are no lights, and number two, if the race cannot be resumed, it becomes official, halfway or not, as we saw last year's Xfinity race, because these street courses are temporary. Starting on Monday, they have to start dismounting the entire thing in order for the roads to be used by everyday citizens. And not only that, but NASCAR added a rule to their rule book regarding street courses. In the case of the Chicago street course, obviously because it's the only street course in the schedule right now, the rule states that if the scheduled distance cannot be completed due to darkness, the next lap after sunset, which is 9:20 p.m. Eastern for Chicago standards, will be the 2 laps to go mark with no overtime. So if a caution comes out after 9:20 p.m. in this case, even if there are 2 laps to go, even if the white flag has not waved, the race is over. There will be no overtime. So with all this being laid down, why the fuck would you start the race at freaking 4:30 p.m. Eastern time with a threat of rain on the radar, giving you only a 5-hour window to get the entire scheduled distance in? Why would NASCAR, they put themselves in such a tight spot? Like, I get it. It's because the big networks, Fox and NBC, they have all the power to decide the start times, and they want that West Coast audience to tune in, so of course they will push back the start times to their liking. But man, sometimes I wish NASCAR just put their foot down and they went back to their 12 p.m., 1 p.m. Eastern start times, at least for tracks that don't have lights, because this is starting to become ridiculous at this point. It's been 2 years in a row this street course race has been impacted by weather too. It really sucks. But anyways, back to the race. We initially had to wait until 7:30 p.m. Eastern to restart the race, and then as soon as the race was about to resume, another rain cell shows up and it starts pouring rain on the track again. And it's pretty clear at this point that even if the race resumed, we were not making it to the end. Like, the end of stage 2 for sure. It was going to be an official race no matter what. But completing all 75 laps schedule, because by the time the race resumed, it would have been well past 8 p.m. Eastern, giving us only about an hour and some change to complete the rest of the race before sunset. And considering there were 50 laps left, each lap under green takes about an hour and 1.5 minutes to complete. Not to mention, there is a stage caution to account for. And this is, again, assuming the entire race goes green, which I really doubted it. Yeah, no, there was no way we were making it to the end, or rather, we were making it to all 75 laps. This race was 100% getting shortened. But again, props to NASCAR for at least not giving up and trying to get as much of this race in the books. If they make it to halfway, I'm calling it a win for them. Not that it matters that much because, again, like I said, they put themselves in such a tight spot to begin with. So finally, the race restarts after a 1.5 hour rain delay. The race resumes. It's a single file restart now in the wet with only 1 hour left. And as soon as the green flag drops, Christopher Bell takes the lead away from Ty Gibbs, leaving him to battle Kyle Larson for second. This green flag run doesn't last long enough, as we have some couple of incidents. Denny Hamlin, he locks the rear brakes up entering turn 6. This is similar to what happened to Briscoe on the same part of the track too. He spins out and collects Stenhouse. Both cars get into the tire barriers, but they are able to continue this by taking a long time to get their cars refire. Thankfully, NASCAR, they held out on the caution for that. The caution actually came out a couple laps later when Larson, who was fighting for second with Ty Gibbs, also locked the brakes up at that same part of the track in turn 6, and he crashes hard into the tire barriers. And I mean hard, like unlike Denny Hamlin or Briscoe or anybody else who had hit the tire barriers, there is big damage to the front of his car, as he came in too hot and not even the tire barrier could stop him from hitting the concrete barrier that was behind. So the damage is terminal, and he has to DNF. So we have another single file restart. Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs, they stay 1-2 as more cars continue to go off course and have issues, as is the case of the SHR teammates of Josh Berry and Chase Briscoe. They entered turn 4 in too hot, and they ended up either hitting the tire barriers in the case of Josh Berry, or they went off course in the case of Chase Briscoe. And then a couple of laps later, another Stewart-Haas racing car, this time Ryan Preece, he locked the brakes up and hit the turn 6 tire wall. He was able to keep going though. As a matter of fact, he just hit the tire barriers, he bounced off of them, got the car refired, and just continued on. No caution. I don't think he even lost that many spots too, so that was honestly incredible. So with the stage coming to a close and the tracks drying up, most of the leaders came down pit road to pit for the dry tires, including the leaders Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs. The only cars who stayed out on the track were Joey Hand, Alex Bowman, Keselowski, Hocevar, Truex, Gragson, Stenhouse, Harrison Burton, Daniel Hemrick, Briscoe, Ryan Preece, and Denny Hamlin. So with all of this shuffling of the running order, Joey Han ends up winning stage 2. This marking the first time ever in a Cup race that the 2 stage winners in a race were non-Cup regulars. Or at the very least, I'm pretty sure that's how this is the first time. Because SVG won stage 1, he's an Xfinity regular, and Joey Han won stage 2. He's a part-time driver. He's not running for Cup Series for the Cup Series title. He's just a part-time driver. Alex Bowman finishes second, and Keselowski third, and then Hocevar, Truex, Gragson, Hemrick, Stenhouse, Burton, and Denny Hamlin complete the top 10 for stage points in this stage. So we go to stage 3. Nobody pits. Nobody pits up at this point. What they have is what they will go with until the very end. And there are only like 15 to 20 minutes left before 9:20 by the time the race restarts. So Joey Han leads with Alex Bowman in hot pursuit. And as the green flag run goes on, it's pretty clear the 48, he has the better car. So it's only a matter of time before Bowman takes the lead from the 60 and starts pulling away. But not for long, as several incidents occur behind him that eventually bring out the caution. The first incident was Allmendinger spinning in turn 12, going into the tire barriers. Thankfully he gets it going, and he makes it to pit road though, so no caution for that. The caution actually came out for Josh Berry, who crashed into the turn 2 tire barrier and had to be pulled out. And at this point, there were only 10 minutes left before the race. Was, got into the 2 to go mark, or before 9:20, before the race entered their sunset protocol, as I like to call it. So it's a sprint to the finish. Joey Han at first is able to keep up with Alex Bowman, but as the run goes on, the 48 starts to once again slowly pull away. Meanwhile, with the track having dried up, the drivers that were on dry tires are starting to make up ground, led by the Toyota trio of Christopher Bell, Ty Gibson, Tyler Reddick. They clearly have the winning strategy. The issue is if they will have time. And for a moment, it looked like they could just make it past the 48, especially since NASCAR was keeping the race green in spite of all of the incidents happening all over the track, as was the case with Briscoe spinning in turn 1, or John Hunter Nemechek clipping the turn 2 tire barrier, or even when Denny Hamlin and Austin Hill spun into the turn 1 tire barrier. Unfortunately, however, the run is halted when Christopher Bell, who was leading the Toyota charge, he gets put in the wall by his teammate Martin Truex after the 19 got turned by Stenhouse, while they were all battling for third, giving both of them, as well as Hocevar, who was also in that battle, big damage. So amidst all of that chaos, Tyler Reddick, he takes third and eventually passes Joey Han for second and starts chasing down Alex Bowman just as the clock strikes 9:20. Which means that after the leader crosses the start-finish line, there's only 2 laps to go now after Bowman comes across the line, and the next flag will end the race, either yellow, white, or checkered. And despite Reddick making it his best effort to close the gap to the point that we all thought he might just have a chance to pass him coming into the checkers, coming up the final corner, it was really tight. Like, a single mistake would take away whatever chance he had of taking the win away from Bowman tight, which is exactly what happened. As on the last lap, Reddick goes wide in turn 5 after bouncing off the inside wall, allowing Bowman to once again stretch the gap and cruise to victory at Chicago. So with this, Alex Bowman, he snaps his winless streak, winning for the first time since Las Vegas in the spring of 2022, adding his name to the list of drivers who have broken their long winless streaks in the year 2024. A list that now includes drivers like Daniel Suarez, Chase Elliott, Keselowski, Joe Logano, Austin Cindric. Yeah, Alex Bowman just became the 6th driver to snap his more than a year-long winless streak. He also adds his name to the playoff grid, assuring once again the Hendrick Motorsports will have all 4 of their guys in the playoffs. And as you would expect, the finishing order was shaken up big time, as you would expect from this crazy race with crazy track conditions. We got a pretty jumbled up finishing order. Reddick finished second, just limping to the finish line. Second race in a row, he has the winning strategy, because if you remember on Nashville, he was good on fuel and had fresher tires, but he just could not get by Joe Logano. and he even lost second to Saint Smith at the finish line. This time, once again, one single mistake. It was gonna be tight anyways, but Reddick, I feel like Reddick had the speed, and he's pretty good on road courses to the point where I just thought, yeah, he could maybe make it work. But yeah, Reddick was just limping to the finish line. Ty Gibbs finished third. Again, great top 5 round for him. He definitely needed it, as he was actually starting to... I felt like after the hot start he got to the season, he was starting to cool off. Joey Hand finishes 4th. Great effort from him. Great effort. He was this close to pulling off an SVG out of his hat. Like a road course, part-time road course ringer showing up and beating the Cup drivers on their wheelhouse, like on their own series. Like that would have been nice. Michael McDowell 5th, Ricky Stenhouse 6th. Great job from Stenhouse, bouncing back from several spins earlier in the race. And road courses are initially his forte, so shout out to Ricky. Todd Gilliland 7th, continuing his pretty under the radar season, I gotta say. Then William Byron in 8th. Kyle Busch finishes 9th. He finally gets a top 10. It's been 7 races since the last time Kyle Busch got a top 10. Kansas, 7 races ago. He finally gets a top 10. Thank you. Thank the racing gods for that. Ryan Blaney finishes 10th. Daniel Suarez in 11th. Daniel Hemrick finishes 12th. Bubba Wallace 13th. And speaking of Bubba Wallace, he was not very pleased with Alex Bowman after the race. He let the 48 know on the cooldown lap by swerving into the left and putting him in the wall. Now, I understand Bubba's frustration. I'm not saying I agree with the way he handled himself, but put yourself in his shoes for a moment. You get spun out by the guy you're fighting with to get to the playoffs, and then that same guy goes on to win the race, while you get nothing but a mid-pack finish for your troubles, and your playoff chances just got that much slimmer. Now, of course, because it's Bubba Wallace, a lot of people will make this a bigger deal than it's supposed to be. I mean, we have seen this happen several times in NASCAR. The most notable example is Matt Kenseth and Brad Keselowski. Now, obviously, Keselowski did not put Kenseth in the wall or anything. I'm talking about Charlotte 2014. Obviously, he didn't put Kenseth in the wall or anything, but he did bump into Kenseth, or he sideswipe him when he had his window net down. Bubba Wallace had Alex Bowman had his window net down when Bubba came up to him and sideswipe him. And we've seen this happen several times in NASCAR. I didn't think much of it. I thought, yeah, NASCAR would take a look at it, but nothing will come out of it. This is something that drivers usually do. Well, NASCAR didn't see it that way. And following the precedent that they had already set with Stenhouse at the All-Star race, that being that, Bubba Wallace had enough time to calm down, given that the time the incident occurred, given that between the time the incident occurred and the end of the race, especially since there was a red flag in between where Bubba could have, talked to Alex Bowman and cleared things up, but he just didn't. NASCAR, they figured that Bubba had enough time to, cool off and talk things out with Alex Bowman, but he did not. So they decided to fine Bubba Wallace $50,000. He doesn't get docked any points, thankfully, because otherwise that would have been catastrophic for his playoff chances. But now, I'm not saying I fully agree with the penalty. Personally, I think that's way too harsh. Kind of like how NASCAR handled the Stenhouse situation. I think the Stenhouse penalty was way too harsh, just like the Bubba Wallace penalty as well. But considering that NASCAR, they went with the precedent they had set earlier in the All-Star race, and also considering he didn't get docked any points because otherwise, like I said, his playoff chances would have gone up in smoke. That would have been the end of his playoff chances. It's not that big of a deal, honestly. I don't agree with it, but at the same time, it's not that big of a deal because, NASCAR, they set a precedent. I don't agree with the precedent, but, I mean, at least they are consistent with it. And as long as he doesn't get docked any points, I'm fine with it. Again, the only problem I have is the whole outcry of the situation, people calling Bubba Wallace a man-child, which is obviously not true. Because by that logic, then every driver that has done this in the past, you will also consider them a man-child. But I guess you just never know. When it comes to Bubba Wallace haters, you just never know. They are the worst people they are some of the worst people in the NASCAR fan base. Those Bubba haters. But yeah. Going down the finishing order here, moving on. Noah Gragson finishes 14th. And I gotta say, What a difference a year makes. Last year, I remember last year, Gragson, he all but hit every single tire barrier there was. This time around, though, he gets a top 15 finish, and he was the cleanest SHR driver compared to his other 3 teammates. Like, seriously, outside of Noah Gragson, Stewart-Haas Racing was just an absolute mess in this race. Briscoe, Josh Berry, they hit the tire barriers like 3 times. Even Ryan Preece got into it a little bit. But yeah, Justin Haley finished 16th, Zane Smith 17th. Brad Keselowski, he finished 18th. He was on pace to a top 15 finish until he got put in the wall by Chase Elliott coming to the checker flag. And Chase Elliott finished 21st because he got spun out by Daniel Suarez shortly after he put Keselowski in the wall. And this ends his top 20 streak he had to start the season at 19 races in the year. His top 20 streak is over. 19 races. 19 races. He started the first 19 races finishing in the top 20, and now after getting spun out by Suarez and on the final lap, I believe he was on pace to finish in 11th. He loses 10 spots, and he comes up 1 spot short, finishes 21st. His top 20 streak is snapped. And of course, he was not happy at Suarez, and he let him know after the race. The two of them had a conversation after getting off their cars. Ross Chastain finishes 22nd, Joey Logano 23rd, Kaz Grala finishes 26th, then Josh Bilicki 28th, Denny Hamlin finishes 30th, Austin Hill 31st, Chase Briscoe 32nd, Martin Truex Jr. 33rd. Another potential good finish gone down the drain for him, I swear. Truex has got to be the unluckiest NASCAR driver this season. It's not just that he cannot compete for wins. It's that he's being proven that he's capable of competing for top 5 finishes, and even then, even when he's not winning, he is running top 5, and even then a top 5, top 10 run gets screwed by stuff out of his control. You gotta feel for him, especially in his farewell tour season. Ryan Preece finishes 34th, Josh Berry 36th. Again, outside of Gragson, Stewart-Haas Racing just sucked. Christopher Bell finished 37th, so he actually ended up with the DNF. It's a really damn shame too, as he was on a race-winning strategy. Like, if Tyler Reddick got that close to Alex Bowman before bouncing off the wall on the last lap, imagine what Bell would have done if he wasn't wrecked out. Like, he was way ahead of Tyler Reddick. If he got clear of those guys and passed Joey Hand, I'm pretty sure that Bell would have passed Alex Bowman for the win. He would have won this race. He was on the race-winning strategy. Make no mistake. That was the race-winning strategy. It's just that circumstances out of his control, they just prevented that from happening. So, Allmendinger finishes 38th. Just a difficult weekend for him overall at a track type that we all expected he will excel at. And then Kyle Larson 39th and SVG 40th. The two best drivers in the previous day's Xfinity race and two of the favorites entering this race, they finished in the bottom 2. That's just how crazy this race was. So I'm not gonna lie, there was a point in time during the rain delay where I had given up hope where we would even go back racing. And even after we did, I thought the race would be cut short before it became official. So the fact that we managed to get 58 of the 75 scheduled laps in, after everything we had to go through on the day, is impressive. Again, props to NASCAR for not backing down and managing to find some wiggle room despite the top spot that they were put in. With that being said, I cannot be too happy for them because of what I said earlier. They put themselves in that position to begin with by scheduling this race to start in the mid to late afternoon. Like, for reference, if this race started even an hour earlier, let's say 3:30 p.m., the same time the Xfinity race the previous day started, there's a good chance we would have gotten all 75 laps in before sunset, even with the rain delay in between. There was literally no reason for NASCAR to complicate themselves other than prison the big corporate networks, I guess. Like, I get it, I get why they do it, but it still pisses me off how much NASCAR just loves to bend over for those types of people. I've also seen some fans say that with the Chicago street race being affected by raining back-to-back years, like NASCAR should give up on the street course idea as a whole. And well, I don't necessarily think that's the case because as the Xfinity race the previous day showed, the street course idea has tons of potential. That Xfinity race, the battle between SVG and Larson and being held under the sun in the dry, That was a top 5 race of the year. The execution, though, it leaves a lot to be desired. That's the main issue with the Chicago Street Race. It's not the racing product as a whole. It's the execution, especially scheduling-wise. And I'm not just talking about the start time here. I'm talking about the location. It's kind of like this dilemma that I have with the Clash at the LA Coliseum, where yeah, NASCAR, they prove that racing at a quarter-mile stadium, it does work, but should you limit yourself to that one venue when there are so many other options out there you could explore? Like, I like Chicago as a city, and personally, I feel like it's been more bad luck than anything, the fact that we haven't seen a dry, sunny, street course cup race yet that has gone the distance. It's always been overcast, wet, weather becomes an issue, darkness becomes an issue, race becomes shortened. So I'm willing to give this Chicago street course at least one more year. But again, I do not want NASCAR to limit themselves to the same city every year as their 4th of July weekend street course fest. Again, I wouldn't be opposed to having the annual street course race be a rotating venue. And besides, Chicagoland Speedway still exists, and I'm kind of holding out some hope that NASCAR finally decides to return there. But yeah, I don't hate the Chicago street course idea. I believe it has potential, but the execution has left a lot to be desired. That's just my take on this situation. And I'm not giving up on this street course idea yet because I feel we haven't seen the full extent of what this street course has to offer. And like I said, the Xfinity race showed that when done perfectly, the street course race a street course race in NASCAR can actually deliver. So, driver of the day. Honestly, I hadn't really thought about driver of the day that much. I guess I'm just gonna give it to Joey Hand. He came pretty close to pulling an SVG today. He just didn't have the speed or strategy in the end to hold off Alex Bowman or the Toyotas, but at least he put his name on the map. Maybe we could see him become the next, like, Boris Said or Ron Fellows from back in the day, where he just shows up and runs, like, top 5, top 10 in some, like, mid-pack team, like RFK Racing. Although RFK is starting to become slowly creeping up into the top 10, I guess. But, I guess Joey Hand could become that type of road course ringer again that NASCAR has kind of strayed away from. But yeah, oh shit, I almost forgot to give this race a grade. You know, I was gonna give it a C+, simply because I was just frustrated about how the way it was executed, but after giving it so much thought and the fact that, you know, NASCAR, they did the most they could, and the fact that we actually got more racing than I actually thought we would get, especially in the end of the race. Like, I didn't think we would make it to even lap 45, but we in the end got like 58 laps in. I'm gonna give this race a B-. I'm gonna be generous. I'm gonna give this race a B-. I feel the Chicago street course, it has potential. Okay. So finally, Chicago weekend is gone. Is done. Pocono. Guess I'm just gonna watch the Cup race. Again, I'm still frustrated that I just could not rewatch the truck race. I guess I'm just gonna have to keep looking because I really want to rewatch that race in full so I can have my race review in. And like I said, I want to get that race review out of the way before I move on to Xfinity and Cup, because it would be really weird for me to talk about the Xfinity and the Cup race and then go back and talk about the truck race later on when the truck race was the first race to happen in the weekend. Like, I like to go in order with this race review, so that's why I've fallen a bit behind on my uploads a little bit, but the 2-week break for the Olympics is coming up, so I'm not really that too worried that if I fall behind, I'm going to be able to use the 2-week break to catch up and get all caught up with my uploads, and even maybe post some regular uploads as well, because I have a couple of ideas coming up. So, anyways, that being said, I guess I'm just going to leave this here and just enjoy the Pocono race. See ya, guys.